Today's spoiler video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Use the link below to pre-order your cards today. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Ravnica Allegiance spoilers. And we have some interesting cards to talk about today. We're getting near the end of spoiler season. We don't have any mythics, but we have a decent number of rares and some really pushed lower rarity stuff, which is kind of scared me a little bit. So let's jump right into it, start talking about some sweet new cards. First, a quick reminder, if you haven't already, it would be amazing of you if you could take a second, click that subscribe button down at the bottom of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let's talk some Ravnica Allegiance spoilers, starting with our new Panharmonicon, risky Panharmonicon, Mirror Match. So Mirror Match, 5-mana enchantment, it makes it so whenever a non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, you flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you win, you get a token. That's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste, you exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So basically, I think of this as a very risky Panharmonicon. It's more expensive, and you gotta win a coin flip for it to work, but if you are able to win some coin flips, you have even like a super powered Panharmonicon. And I mean, obviously the big difference is you're actually getting the creature. You're not just doubling up the enter the battlefield trigger, but because those creatures go away at the end of turn, the most powerful thing you can do with Mirror Match is use creatures with enter the battlefield triggers, similarly to Panharmonicon. So in older formats, or like in Commander, you can't go deep with Carrick's Thumb. We haven't seen any sign of Wizards reprinting this in Standard, but if you're building a Commander deck, Mirror Match, easily an inclusion there where you can kind of manipulate the odds by using Carrick's Thumb as a way to facilitate winning more flips and just really go crazy. On the other hand, as far as Standard is concerned, Mirror Match, imagine you play your Vampire Sovereign. If you get lucky, in theory, you could just kill your opponent. You make like 4 Vampire Sovereigns, drain for 12, attack for another 9 in the air. That closes out the game right away. On the other hand, you can spend 6 mana on Mirror Match, lose your first coin flip, and you kind of wasted 6 mana and an entire turn doing nothing. The good news is, if you can leave Mirror Match out on the battlefield and survive long enough, sooner or later you will win coin flips. So just play all your Chupacabras and Vampire Sovereigns, and trust that as long as you live and can keep playing creatures, you'll get lucky eventually and win some coin flips. So I'm super excited for Mirror Match. It's a card that there isn't really any way to break. You're just trusting the magic gods that it's gonna work out for you and you're gonna win some flips. Although, like I said, you can skew the odds in your favor by just living long enough to flip a whole bunch of coins and knowing that sooner or later the coins are gonna come up in favor and you're gonna be able to make some copies of creatures. So I think this is a really sweet card. I expect we will be playing it at least out against the odds because it does remind me of one of my favorite cards in Panharmonicon, and while it's certainly a risky Panharmonicon, it still seems like a ton of fun. Next on our list, we have Font of Agonies, which is a pretty weird little card. So 1-mana enchantment, whenever you pay life, you can put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies, and then you can pay 1 in black, remove 4 counters to destroy target creature. So this is an enchantment that can be very powerful, like a repeatable Doomblade type effect, but you gotta play it in the right build. So how do we go about building around Font of Agonies? In Standard, the 2 best ways are Doom Whisper and Arguel's Bloodfast. Doom Whisper, you pay 2 life, you surveil, you get 2 counters. You do that twice, you get 4 counters, and you can pay mana, kill something. Arguel's Bloodfast, 2 activations, draws you 2 cards, gets the 4 counters. Of course, you will run out of life eventually, which is a little bit risky. Blood Operative is another option. It's a little bit awkward number-wise because you pay 3 life, so you're 1 counter short, but it is worth mentioning if you're building around Font of Agonies. So I think maybe there's some chance that this is like a sideboard card for Doom Whisper decks. If you do get like 2 removal activations or 3 removal activations out of it, it's a very powerful card. The other thing is, it does work with Shocklands as well. Like you pay 2 life, play a shotgun tapped, that's 2 counters on Font of Agonies. So in theory, you can just fuel this by playing a ton of Shocklands. The same thing is sort of true in Modern as well. Cracking a Polluted Delta to get an untapped Watery Grave, that's 3 counters right there. So it's probably too risky, too slow for Modern. But with the fetch land for Shockland mana base, you you can make this happen pretty quickly and repeatedly in Modern, so maybe there's a chance that like Death Shadow or something that's already losing a lot of life to their mana base could take advantage of it. So I think Font of Agonies, it's a card that you can't play in every deck, but if you build around it, it can be at least a powerful sideboard removal option where you're able to kill multiple big things with a single card, which is a pretty good deal, even considering the build around cost. Next on our list, we got Baddeck Bedazzle, and this is the Rakdos rare split card. So front side, target creature gets +3, -3 until end of turn. Backside, also instant, which is unique. Both sides are instants. Destroy target non-basic land. Bedazzle deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So this is sort of like front side Nameless Inversion, which is a fine removal spell. You don't get the weird changeling stuff, but it's a fine removal spell that can also be used as a pump spell in a pinch. Like if you're attacking with a Doom Whisperer, you can use this to give it +3 power and hopefully kill your opponent with that attack. The backside, the best I could come up with was Volcanic Upheaval. Honestly, instant speed land destruction is rare. 6 mana is a lot, but it is a way you can leave up your mana, have this removal spell up, and then if you don't need to cast a removal spell, blow up a Iskanta that is flipped or a treasure map that is flipped. So there are some things you can do with the Bedazzle side, which I think this, like many of the split cards, it's a card that you play because the front half is a fine removal spell. And it is a fine removal spell. It's not super great, but it's fine. And then the back half is just kind of like your bonus upside, where maybe you get to blow up an Iskanta, maybe you just blow up a random land for no reason if you're feeling up to it. So I think it's a fine card because the front half is a pretty reasonable card. And then the back half, maybe you cast it like 10% of games, but in those games, blowing up an Iskanta or something in response to your opponent tapping out for an activation, that might swing the game in your favor all by itself. Otherwise, we got Ethereal Absolution, which this card's pretty sweet. It's really expensive. 6 mana, that is a lot. 6 mana enchantment, not legendary, which is key. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponent control get -1, -1. And you can pay for exile a card from an opponent's graveyard and make a 1/1 spirit, which will be a 2/2 spirit if you have an Ethereal Absolution. So this is basically a Glorious Anthem, mixed with a Curse of Deathhold, mixed with a Moorland Haunt. You get all 3 of these cards smashed together, which means that 6 mana, when you consider everything this does, isn't actually that bad of a deal. And I love that you can stack this up. One of my dreams is just have all 4 of these on the battlefield. Our creatures are massive, our opponent's creature's not doing anything, and Moorland Haunt lets us just build an army all by itself. So this is a card that in a control deck can just take over the game and win it all by itself. It also does some sweet things in Standard, like with an Ethereal Absolution out, you answer March of the Multitudes preemptively forever. Like your opponent just can't March of the Multitudes, so they lose all the tokens. It gets rid of Healer Hawks, Adanto Vanguards. So there are a lot of cheap creatures that this hits on. So while this probably isn't a card you could play 4 of, it definitely seems like a card that has some applications in Standard, and the fact that it can be your removal spell, and your creature pumping spell, and your finisher kind of gives it this weird Planeswalker-esque feel, where it does a little bit of everything, and can maybe just take over the game all by itself. So I really like Ethereal Absolution. It's a card that I will probably play way more than I actually should, but it just does so much, and also kind of locks the opponent out of the game if they're playing specific decks. We also got the Orzhov split rare card, Revival Revenge. So Revival Revenge, the front half, return target creature, convert a mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Back half, target opponent loses half of their life rounded up. So this is a card I'm excited for because of Revival. Revival is a really good Magic card. Reanimating a creature, convert a mana cost 3 or less for 2 mana means you should be coming out ahead in terms of mana. You can get back a 3-drop like Militia Bugler, Jadelight Ranger, Knight of Autumn. This might actually just be better than something like Find Finality in some decks where you're getting creatures right back to the graveyard for 2 mana. It possibly could even show up in Modern, where 2 mana to reanimate a 3 or less card is actually a pretty good deal. So I think that the front half makes the card playable all by itself. The back half, it's a little bit weird. It's kind of like a Blood Tribute / Beacon of Immortality. And I imagine there's some situations where you're going to gain like 10 or 15 life, your opponent's going to lose like 10 life, and it's probably pretty effective. But really, this is another one of those split cards where I think you play it because the front half is busted, and getting back a 3-drop for 2 mana is a good deal. And then every once in a while, you just revenge your opponent opponent and swing the game massively in your favor in the late game. Next on our list, we have Cinderlash, which is a sweet little hateful enchantment. So 2 mana in the Gruul colors. Whenever opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinderlash, 1 damage to that player, and then you can pay 1, sack it, blow up an artifact or enchantment, and it deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So the first thing I think of this card is Modern, really, where in Modern, it's kind of like a somewhat weak hate card for Storm in KCI, where your opponent's casting a ton of non-creature spells, you're going to kill them as they're trying to combo. So it makes it a little bit similar to like a Damping Sphere in that regard. And then it's also an artifact removal spell for Affinity and Hardened Scales and Tron. So it might be that this card has enough flexibility. While it's not insane at either of its job, like 3 mana to kill an artifact, a little bit expensive, 1 damage for each non-creature spell, a little bit weak, it still might be enough with its flexibility to show up in some Modern sideboards. Taking advantage of a slot where we used to play like Destructive Revelry or Smash to Smithereens, it might just be that this is a better option than those cards if you're playing them in their sideboard anyway. And then in Standard, I mean, it does hit some things. The Storm aspect isn't super relevant, although, I mean, even played fairly, if you're playing Gruul against a control deck, and your opponent's playing some counter spells and removal spells and card draw spells, that 1 damage is going to slowly add up, so even if it's not a true hate spell, it's still relevant, and then you could blow up like an Immortal Sun, a Search for His Content treasure map, so it might be good enough for Standard sideboards as well. So definitely an interesting design, just because of the flexibility. Neither mode is especially efficient or pushed, but it hits on a lot of different things, and doing a little bit against everyone might be enough to get this card seeing play not just in Standard sideboards, but in Modern sideboards as well. We also got Plaza of Harmony, which, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. If you have 2 or more gates, you can add a colorless, or you can add a mana of any type of gate you control could produce. So the thing I like about this card is it kind of gives you an untapped land for the gate deck. If you're trying to play all gates, the problem is your land's coming to play untapped like crazy. The upside is this gives you a land that comes into play untapped and makes mana of any color. It also works especially well with the 5-color gate land, since it gives you 8 5-color lands, which is kind of interesting. The downside is it's not a gate itself, so it's a little bit awkward. It's not supporting your Gate Matters cards, so we'll have to see. I think this card might be able to help support 5-color decks in Standard. That's where I'm most excited about it. You play the 5-color gate that enters tapped, you play this, you basically have like a weird reflecting pool type combo, and that's basically the plan of your deck. And the life gain relevant against aggro, which if you're playing a deck full of gates that enter the battlefield tapped, probably need that life gain to stay alive. So kind of an interesting little card. We'll see if it actually shows up. Last on our list today, we have Gate of the Guild Pack, which is an interesting Anthem effect. 2 mana artifact, not legendary, surprisingly. Multicolor creatures you control get +1/+1. So this is a card that I feel like might not be super great right now, but could be super great in the future. The problem with Gate of the Guild Pack right now is we don't have any 1-drops that are multicolored, and normally where you see Anthems be especially effective is where you can play a 1-drop, play your Anthem to pump your 1-drop, get in damage, and then continue up your curve. In Standard right now, the multicolor curve starts at 2 mana and then 3 mana. So you can pump Glowspore Shaman, Spybug, Swiftblade Vindicators. There's plenty of things to pump, and you can definitely build around it, but it's a little bit weird because of how the curve lines up. What would really push this card over the top would be hybrid 1-drops, which we could get in the 3rd set of Ravnica. If we got like a Dryad Militant type effect, then all of a sudden, this card is looking pretty insane, because you're playing your 1-drop, hitting for 3 on turn 2, and then you just play the rest of your stuff. Also worth mentioning for older formats, I mean, I don't know if it's good enough, but we have Watchwolves and Loxodon Spiders. The multicolor, like, Stompy curve is actually pretty good, and Gate of the Guild Pack could be an inclusion there, so we'll see. I definitely expect people to try this, just because Anthems that you can stack up are really powerful, and if you want to play a bunch of colors, do crazy things in Standard, it's a reasonable option for making your team even bigger. Although the fact that we don't have 1-drops to trigger it is a little bit concerning and might keep it in the just a little bit too slow for top tier deck stage in Standard. Next up, we have some lower rarity stuff, starting with maybe the most busted card from all of Ravnica Allegiance, Skewer the Critics, 3 mana, sorcery, Spectacular Spectate 1, speculate 1, 3 damage to any target. It's basically another lightning bolt. Like, yes, you gotta deal damage with something. No, that shouldn't be a problem. So this means that standard burn / mono red decks now have 8 lightning bolts, essentially, with Skewer and Wizard's Lightning. They have Lightning Strike, they have Shock. That is an absurd amount of burn. You throw in good creatures like Get to Lava Runner, Vishino Pyromancer, an amazing card advantage engine in Experimental Frenzy, and I think that mono red, it's not going anywhere. This deck looks super busted. Having 8 1-mana 3 damage spells is really insane for a deck in Standard. That's just not something that happens in Standard very often. So I think that this is going to be one of the most impactful cards of the set. In Standard, gonna make mono red even better, which is kind of scary. And it's a common, which means it can show up in Pauper alongside Lightning Bolts and Fire Blast. I wouldn't be surprised to see it in Pauper Burn. I wouldn't be surprised to see it in Modern Burn, where it's pretty easy to Lightning Bolt your opponent and Skewer the critics your opponent because you're dealing damage with all your other spells. So I think this is just a card that goes in burn decks across formats. Standard, for sure. Modern, most likely. Pauper, seems like it. So this card is going to really shake up a lot of formats, just giving them another Lightning Bolt. And we're reaching the point where, in like Modern, you can pay like 20 or 24 Lightning Bolts, which is just absolutely insane. It's so much damage for so little mana. Then we have a bunch of mostly limited stuff. Spires in Windstorm Break, good for the blue-white Flyers deck in Limited. Fireblade Artist might be fine in Constructed. It's a really slow once-a-turn sack outlet, but on a 2/2 haste body, it's fine. Shark to Crab, Wizards. Seriously. Fish, octopus, crab, and the name is Shark to Crab. These Simic names, I don't know. And we can't have squirrels, apparently, in Black Border, but we can have Shark to Crab. I don't know what's going on out in Washington. We also got the rest of our guild mages. Senate Guild Mage, actually one of the better ones for Constructed, because most of its activated abilities are only 1 mana. Cult Guild Mage, a little bit expensive. Then we have just some limited only removal spells. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily spoilers for today. So what do you want to copy with Mirror Match? How consistent will it be? What about Fauna of Agonies? Can we build around it and make it good? The rare split cards, are they going to show up in Constructed? Ethereal Absolution, can it lock people out of the game in Standard? How busted is Skewer the Critics? All the lower rarity stuff. How about the other random cards? The Gates Matter stuff, Cinder Lash, what are they going to do? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.